I remember when I got my hands on the CB-01 repeater and thinking to myself how fun it was to use. And on top of that, the gun packed a hell of a punch, making my first impression one that was a bit hyperbolic. Because now after using it for around 18 hours, give or take, I've come to a very different conclusion, which is that the weapon is actually balanced quite well. And before some of you guys come at me with the pitchforks, please just hear me out. Because in today's video, I'm going to show you why that is. We're going to talk pure stats and performance by comparing the repeater with the assault rifles in the medium class to see if it's actually overpowered, or if it just seems that way. But before we get into that, if this video helps you out in some way, shape, or form, please smash that like button. It's a small button for you, but it means the world to me. Also, subscribe for all things to finals and the most comprehensive weapon guides in the game. Let's jump into it. So despite all the thumbnails that you see saying the repeater is broken, because let's just be honest, that title has been used for the majority of weapons to get clicks, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We've all got to grow somehow. However, it does create the facade that this weapon will outclass any that goes against it, and is basically overpowered. While it is true that you can 2-tap a light and medium, the key to doing that is actually hitting your shots, because this weapon can quickly go from the most deadly and satisfying in the game to your worst nightmare, missing shots that you would otherwise hit quite easily with any medium AR. Because despite this weapon being extremely powerful, the player has to have better than average aim to unlock its full potential, and to use that potential on a consistent basis. Hence why it is quote unquote high risk, high reward. Since launch, I've come across only a handful of players actually using this weapon extremely well. As for the rest, whether it be against me or on my team, miss almost their entire mag, then end up switching to an assault rifle. And for good reason. To compare, the AKM can eliminate a light with body shots at 0.70 seconds, the FCAR in 0.67 seconds, and the FAMAS in 0.76 seconds. And then when you add headshots into the equation, those times are halved, compared to the repeater's 0.78 seconds, which is the same whether you hit body or headshots. And each time you miss, that TTK rises astronomically. The only benefits that the repeater has when it comes to damage is when you hit your headshots on a medium, giving the repeater a 0.78 TTK, beating out the AKM at 0.80, the FAMAS at 0.82 seconds, and ties with the FCAR at 0.78 seconds. But even with that, is the player really going to sacrifice the consistency they get from the FAMAS and AKM for up to a 0.04 second decrease in TTK that is also dependent on whether or not they can nail 2 headshots in a row? And don't even get me started with the heavy, which trails behind all 3 assault rifles at 3.12 seconds for body shots compared to the AKM, FAMAS, and FCAR that don't even break 2 seconds. And as for headshots on heavy, you have the repeater with a 1.56 TTK compared to the AKM at 1.10, the FAMAS at 1.20, and FCAR at 1.11 seconds. In terms of range, you could say this is where the repeater shines the most, which is true, but as you can see from the numbers I'm showing you here, it's very minimal, at least speaking for the FCAR and the FAMAS. And on top of that, a decent player could easily close the gap and into effective ranges. So just from comparing it to some of the weapons in its own class, the phrase high risk, high reward is truly emphasized. But let's just forget about the medium class for a moment here and talk about a point that Sanguine Knights, one of the best players in my personal opinion that I've seen use this weapon thus far, bring up when we were discussing the repeater. There are several weapons in both light and heavy's arsenal that have a better body or headshot TTK than the repeater in their effective ranges, and also have an easy learning curve. Weapons on the light such as the Matter, M11, XP54, LH1, V9S, and even the 93R. And as for heavy, they have the Akimbo, KS23, Lewis gun, minigun, M60, SH1216, and Shack 50. Pick your poison, because each of these weapons at minimum are tied or leave the repeater in the dust when it comes to TTK in their effective ranges. But why does it look so powerful when you see top players use it? The answer is quite simple. They just have better mechanical skill than the majority of the player base, hence why they make it look easy, when in reality that is far from the truth. The funny thing is, streamers like Etelco can make the FCAR look broken, Carnifex can make the XP54 look broken, Ikazo can make Goo and Akimbos look broken, Apo making the bow look broken, and Sanguine Knights last season made the revolver look broken. You can see where I'm getting at here. Just because a player is able to harness the full potential of a weapon doesn't necessarily mean it is extremely powerful or easy to use. The funny thing is, if you have two weapons that are clearly overpowered, the one that has an easier learning curve will barely get any complaints versus the one that has a harder learning curve. Because to simply put it, players don't want to lose their favorite weapon that they can use effectively, consistently. Using the F-car as an example, we only got a nerf to that when the player base started to feel that the meta was getting stale, and the best option was the only option. And a little side note before I move on to my next topic. I honestly think the sandbox is currently in a very good place, and the balancing is better than it's ever been. The devs definitely cooked this season, although it may not be perfect, and some weapons may need a slight buff, the balance in this season is a world of difference when compared to the rest. So, getting back on topic, when further discussing this weapon with Sanguine. Oh, before I forget, you guys, if you want to see an extremely talented player when it comes to movement, aim, game sense, and learning a thing or two from just simply watching, you guys gotta either follow him on YouTube or check him out on Twitch. He's a real chill dude, and like I said before, he makes the game look easy. I left a link to both his YouTube as well as Twitch on the screen and also in the description. Anyhow, he brought to my attention a much needed quality of life buff that will make the feel of the weapon much more satisfying than it already is. The first is the mistimed animation of the priming sequence, meaning that the animation to load the next shot lingers a little bit too long. So if you're mailing directly after loading a shot, the player has to start the reload animation all over again, which for this weapon is pretty much a death sentence. Before this, I thought I was literally going crazy, because it was very hard to catch if you're not paying attention. If I were to get close and melee my opponent right after firing and didn't wait long enough, the weapon would have to go through the animation of priming the next shot again, which is quite frustrating when you have to make every single shot count and the TTK is barely competitive at close range. Also, if the servers are acting up and any type of lag is introduced, this could definitely emphasize the perceived length of the animation. So on that note, I would even go as far as saying that the weapon may not need a damage buff per se, but a slight increase to the RPM for a much smoother experience. The next is a bug that I definitely think the devs had no intention of adding, but it will literally take you 13 shots to destroy a zip. You see, I had no idea this was even a bug for this weapon particularly until I realized that I was unloading my entire clip on this zip, which resulted in me getting smacked in the face by a sledgehammer when I finally decided just to simply melee the zip. But other than that, the repeater in my opinion is quite possibly one of the most balanced weapons in the finals straight out of release. It's a weapon that rewards those who invest time into their mechanical skill by manifesting it into the most satisfying headshots ever experienced in the finals, and punished harshly with every shot missed, allowing it to stand out in the sandbox rather than oppress it. And that pretty much makes the case as to why I think the CB-01 repeater is in a good spot at the moment, and may need even a slight buff to its RPM, providing the user with a much smoother experience, making it not overpowered because that is strictly determined on the player's accuracy. Remember, huge damage is worth nothing if you can't land your shots. But then again, that is just my opinion, and I certainly do not speak for everyone. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you found this video informative, please smash that like button. It's a small button for you, but it means the world to me. And also subscribe for all things to finals, as well as the most comprehensive weapon guides in the game. I hope you all are having a blast this season. Peace and love, and I'll see you in the arena.